This is the Louie Tee Network.
I'm ready for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Overtime. So we head to overtime.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie Tee? Welcome to Saturday night overtime. Cincinnati Bengals at the Houston Texans. Wasn't much of a football game here, folks. A lot of punts, a lot of bad offense. But when it was all said and done, it came down to a field goal by a bad field goal kicker that's bounced around this league. And I've talked about retread field goal kickers on numerous occasions and how if there were good kickers out there to be had, every team would have one and you wouldn't have retread kickers like Randy Bullock. And I specifically used his name when I brought this same topic up the last time I was talking about retread kickers. That's why you don't get rid of your kicker unless you have a better option. And normally you can find a young, talented kicker in the draft and not have to spend a first round or, in the Bucks case, a second round or any type of pick. If you want to spend a fifth or a sixth or even a seventh, sure, knock yourself out. But you can get an undrafted kicker out of college and keep it moving. But these retread kickers are retread kickers for a reason. And the Cincinnati Bengals found that out. Look, Mike Nugent wasn't very good and he needed to go. I get it. But if you're going to get rid of Mike Nugent, don't replace him with Randy Bullock, okay? Cincinnati had to find that out the hard way tonight. Don't do that. Have a plan in mind. Don't just get rid of Mike Nugent, have a tryout on a Tuesday, bring in some retread kickers, and pick the worst one of the bunch. In any event, Houston wins the AFC South in this football game. And I'm going to make this really short and sweet. I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. I've got better things to do. And this game was not all that entertaining nor appetizing. So I'm not going to sit here and spend a bunch of time on this game. But we'll talk about how the Texans were able to get it done and what this means for them moving forward. And we'll quickly gloss over the Cincinnati Bengals and move on. Before we do that, though, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to Louie Tee Network on YouTube. Also, I'm on Twitter at In the Lab Room. That's the Twitter handle. Go ahead and follow me. And I'm also on Facebook. In the Lab Room is the Facebook page. All my social media platforms right there in that screen scrolling up atop. So make sure you handle all of those things quickly. The Texans in this game, they got it done. Tom Savage making his first career NFL start. I thought he was solid in this game. I didn't think he did anything earth-shattering. I thought there were times that he could have run and used his legs, as we saw him do a little bit later on. And I was talking to my dad as we were watching the game, and I said, I think one of the things that you see when a guy hasn't had experience in the game and hasn't played in such a long time, meaningful football that is, they talked about his last meaningful game playing in was in 2013 at Pitt in some kind of bowl game. This is a situation where you got to get the feel for the game, especially if you're not one of these guys that likes to run. You got to get into the game, get into a rhythm, maybe take a sack or two, or in his case, 4 or 5, to realize I got to get out of here. I got to run. I can't stay in the pocket and take sacks. I've got to abort the mission if it's not there. And so he did that late in the ball game, extended some plays, did some good things there. But you could tell this is a guy that hasn't had a lot of experience starting. And it was enough to get it done against a Cincinnati Bengals team that had no weapons, no weaponry at all. No Tyler Eifert, no A.J. Green, no Gio Bernard. Hell, almost basically no Jeremy Hill. You're looking at Rex Burkhead and a cast of other guys that you're frankly not going to win with in this league. A lot of rookies and young guys. Cody Core out there, Tyler Boyd out there, C.J. Uzama out there. A lot of young guys that you just don't want to have to rely on. Look more like the Cincinnati Bengals team that was trying to win earlier in the season when they didn't have a lot of weapons than the one that had gotten a lot better of late because they had some of their guys back. And so they struggled offensively tonight. That's an understatement, did the Cincinnati Bengals, but so did the Houston Texans. But they found a way to get it done. And the defense showed why they're the number one defense in the league yet again. And this is the situation with the Texans every year. I feel like we're repeating ourselves year in and year out with this Texas football team. We talk about how good the defense is, and if they just had a quarterback, how much trouble they could be in the postseason. They get in because they're in a soft division. They win the division via their defense. We look around and we say, hey, tough Texans defense, but do they have enough on offense? And they're probably going to get smoked in the first round of the playoffs. That remains to be seen. But Tom Savage, I thought he was okay, but the only difference between he and Brock Osweiler tonight was he didn't turn it over. Like, you didn't leave this game saying they may have something in Tom Savage. Not like how you felt last week after he came from behind against Jacksonville. A week of preparation, you thought he would be better, and he just wasn't in this game. And some of it is on him. Some of it is no Lamar Miller, and some of it is just not enough guys making plays around him. But a lot of it was Tom Savage. Let's be honest here. So, and again, it's his first NFL start. I don't want to beat the guy up, okay? But this was not pretty. This didn't look like a team that was about to win a division and be in the playoffs and host a playoff game. They're going to have to play much better if they want to win a game. And if they don't want to get embarrassed like they did last year versus the Chiefs, they're going to have to play much better, or else it will look a lot like the Chiefs game. Similar circumstances, no J.J. Watt. You go in feeling good, and then if your quarterback implodes on you, this could get ugly in Houston. Lamar Miller will get a chance to rest. That's why this game was so important, because you didn't want next week to have to matter, because you didn't want to have to play Lamar Miller. Now you give him an extra week of rest. He should be ready to go, well-rested, come a wild card weekend, whomever you'll be playing in that game, whether it be an AFC North opponent or an AFC East opponent, whomever that person is or team is, Lamar Miller will be back, and that will help you because you desperately need the run game to be an assistance to your quarterback, whomever is under center. Looks like it's going to be Tom Savage when that game takes place. But in any event, the defense did it again. Jadeveon Clowney and company, Whitney Merciless, all those guys, the secondary stepped up. They played top-notch ball, which is why the Texans, and I felt like this, and I said it all season long, and I told you I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I told you I felt like the Texans were going to win this division just because their defense was more consistent than anybody else's defense in this division, and they've been here, done that before. They don't need a good quarterback. They don't need good quarterback play to win this division. We've seen that year in and year out, and they've done it. So I figured they'd find a way to get it done when it was all said and done, and that's exactly what they did. And tonight, they got assistance from the defense with a turnover. They were able to get a stop late in the game, force a field goal. Now, you would like to see your field goal kicker make that if you're Cincinnati, but he didn't. And give some credit to the Texans for finding a way to get this one done. Again, it wasn't pretty, but it was good enough and gritty enough to get them the W, win this division, clinch a week early so that now that game versus Tennessee next week rendered meaningless. You can rest guys if you need to and figure out a way to start game planning to be better offensively next week or a wild card weekend. And in the meantime, Tom Savage can get some snaps next week, find a way to be better. And he's nursing a little bit of a hyperextension. He hyperextended his knee in this game. So maybe he doesn't play, but he needs the reps. So I'm pretty sure if he can go, he'll be out there getting as many reps as possible, trying to get a little bit more comfortable in the offensive scheme against a real team and see how he fares to basically be a tune-up for him going in to the postseason. They've got to find a better way, and I've said this when Osweiler was under center. They got to find better ways to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers. To me, they're doing too much vertically and not simplifying. And I've been hearing people say they're simplifying it too much. No. How about throwing a hitch? How about throwing a slant to D-Hop? How about, or Nuke? How about throwing one to Will Fuller? These guys are dynamic and explosive. Get the football in their hands. What about a jet sweep? What about something creative? You don't have to be 18 yards or 9 yards or 7 yards down the field to get these guys involved. Find ways to get these guys the football. They're dynamic athletes that can change the game on any given snap. Give them an opportunity to do that. Take some of the pressure off your quarterback and to put that pressure onto your playmakers and allow them to do what they get paid to do, and that's make plays. But they got it done 12-10. Again, it wasn't pretty, but it was gritty, and it was a W. They didn't have what you would call the sharpest of performances, but when it was all said and done, they overcame the lack of production at the quarterback position. They overcame a missed extra point, or a blocked one, I should say. And they overcame all of the things that good teams in this league find a way to overcome, and they got it done, and they clinched the AFC South at 9-6. You go to the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a disappointing loss and a disappointing season. They're now 5-9-1. They had nothing out there in terms of weapons offensively. This looked like the team that played against the Indianapolis Colts in the playoffs 2 years ago when A.J. Green was out and so was the rest of the squad. And Rex Burkhead was starting at running back. Rex Burkhead was starting at receiver. Rex Burkhead was starting at left tackle. Rex Burkhead was starting at center. This is what the team looked like a couple years back in the playoffs. And you just can't win like this. And they've had struggles with injuries and turnovers and you name it. And now the field goal kicking situation has reared its ugly head and at the most inopportune time. But I don't feel bad for him because when you employ Randy Bullock as your field goal kicker, this is what you get. This is why the Texans said, hey, we spent the draft pick on him, but we have to get rid of this guy. We can't win with him. You had to find out why. And so he'll probably be looking for work here shortly yet again. And Cincinnati drops another one. It's a shame because the defense actually played well enough for them to win this game. And they just didn't do enough offensively. Brandon LaFell was literally, along with Rex Burkhead, the entire offense, it seemed like. And again, Brandon LaFell should never be the guy that you're counting on in any given game. Neither should Rex Burkhead. And when they are, you have a problem. So they were only able to muster 10 points tonight, and that's a shame because, like I said, again, the defense played well enough for them to win this game, but wasn't enough offense, wasn't any contributions from special teams. This would have been a perfect night for Alex Erickson to break off an 85-yard kickoff return and set him up in great field position, but tonight it wasn't meant to be, and even though they had all of these struggles that I'm talking about on offense and no weapons, they still, at game's end, was in a position to win this football game. And you send your field goal kicker out there and you expect him to pound that through and get you a W, and he didn't. And so that's really frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's a frustrating end to a frustrating game in a frustrating season for the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's get to your comments quickly and skedaddle. Rarely Even says, Lou, what's your favorite Christmas movie? Mine is The Santa Claus. I'm a Home Alone guy, man. So, I do the Home Alone trilogy. I can get down with Home Alone. Captain Spartan 04 says, not bad commentators tonight. Even though they literally put me to sleep, they were better than Collinsworth. Have a great Christmas tomorrow, man. Likewise to you guys. It's amazing. The first two comments that I read have almost absolutely nothing to do with the game itself, which tells you all you need to know about the game itself. Raylan even says, you know it was a boring game when Brandon LaFell had the biggest play. Great observation, great point by my man Ree. Enrique Valencia says, what a savagery win. Yes, indeed, it was. Mazer12_12 says, Tom gets Miller back, so there's that can help him out a lot. Yeah, I agree, but he's got to play better. But again, it was his first start, so I don't want to pound him too harshly, but he does need to play much better. How about my Browns? Hashtag LOL from my man Sean Mack. How about those Browns? I thought they could get one against San Diego. That was going to be their best shot, but I still thought they were going to lose the game. Never did I think they were going to win for 1 second. But I said if they're going to beat somebody in these final two, it's got to be San Diego. And who better to beat than the Chargers? Everybody seems to be beating the Chargers these days. And so the Browns get off the hook. I wanted to see them get off the schneid, man. Nobody wants to see a team go 0-16, so that was good. Sean Mack also says, if this is the way the Texans are playing, they're going to be one and done in the playoffs. I agree with you. I think it's going to be similar to last year. I don't know if it'll be as bad, but I agree. I think it's going to be something along those lines if they don't get better. Mazer_12 says, the one thing I've noticed this season is that we're not being creative enough on offense like we have the past two seasons towards the latter part of the season. And that's that's been my biggest gripe all year long is the lack of creativity on the offensive side of football. I feel like everything is just standard offense. Nothing is creative. They're not doing anything. No jet sweeps. Nothing creative. No screens. Slants. Nothing. No pick plays. It just seems like everything is just let's run our offense. Let's put Nuke outside and run a 7-yard comeback. Let's put Will Fuller out there and let him run a couple of double moves back inside, back outside on a Z out. 12 yards down the field. It's just too long developing. You're asking, your quarterback to make too many reads, especially when it's a guy that's making his first NFL start. Simplify things for him. Get the football out of his hands quickly. Let's run some screens. Let's do some different things, a jet sweep, a reverse, something, some ghost action, something to get the defense, their eyeballs and their eye discipline moving around and maybe making a mistake. But everything just seems vanilla with this Texans team, and it's been my issue with them for the majority of the season, even when Brock Osweiler was under center. Enrique Valencia says, Tom Savage isn't the QB the Texans need, but the one they deserve. I mean, that's coming from a Colts fan, so take it with a grain of salt. Mazer_12 says, right now, Savage is trying to get used to the game speed, knows the offense, but is getting the reps he needs. I agree. He could be much better, and we'll see what happens. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't want to come down too hard on him because, again, this is early on in the man's career, so we'll see what happens as he plays a little bit more. And that's what I was telling my dad, you know, as he was getting sacked, and my dad was like, he's got to run. And I'm like, you got to remember, this is a guy that hasn't played a lot. Hasn't played really at all since he's gotten into the league. And so he's having to make these adjustments. He's having to learn from experience. And so it's almost like getting back on that bike and learning how to ride all over again. And you saw that towards the end of the game, he got a little bit more comfortable. Enrique Valencia says, is Die Hard a Xmas movie? By the way, Merry Christmas, Louie Tee. It's funny, I saw a commercial that said it was. No, it's hell no. Die Hard isn't a Christmas movie. Who would call it a Christmas movie? I don't understand that. How's that categorized as a Christmas movie? Mr. Lucas speaking says, what are your thoughts on O'Brien's play calling? And I've talked about that all season long. I'm not in love with it. I think he's too set in his ways. I like the best head coaches in this league. They adapt to their personnel. They adapt to the strengths of their players. And it just doesn't seem like he's doing it. It's like he's rigid and he's fixed in his play calling ways. Like, hey, look, this is what I ran in New England. This is what I ran at Penn State. This is what I run. This is what I know. And you're going to have to either do this or look, sometimes you got to make adjustments to the way some guys play. And I don't feel like he's doing that. I think he's just calling plays instead of calling plays that benefit the players that are on the field at the same time with one another. And maybe your quarterback needs a little bit of getting into a rhythm. Maybe you start off with a couple of nice, easy, simple completions, you know, to get them started, a hitch, a screen, a slant, something to get them into a rhythm. You don't see that. These guys come out chucking it 8, 9, 10, 12 yards down the field. I just feel like they don't do enough to get their quarterbacks into a rhythm. I'm not in love with O'Brien's play calling at all. I'm not in love with what they're doing. George Godsey, all those guys, I'm not in love with what they're doing in Houston right now. Noah Ruth says, who do you predict in the Super Bowl? Hard to say. I don't even know the 12 teams in the playoffs yet and where they're seated. Come back and ask me that in a week's time. I'll be able to tell you exactly how I feel in terms of who will probably come out of each conference. Mr. Lucas Speaker says, you answer my question. Okay, great. I'm glad I was able to do that. The Rarely even says the Texans can make the playoffs in the AFC when my Bucks have to bust their ass just to barely miss the playoffs. Face palm. It's tougher. Well, I won't say it's tougher. It's just the fact that they play in a soft division. I mean, if your Bucks played in the AFC South, maybe they'd be in the playoffs right now as we speak, or at least fighting for a chance to win that division. But it's the Texans and it's the AFC South, and it's been that way for quite some time. And so it is what it is. Let's see. I want to make sure I don't miss any comments. Sean Mack says, hell yeah, it is, bro. And Cruz Lopez says, the Super Bowl coming to Houston regardless, LOL. That it is. It will be played in NRG Stadium regardless of whether the Texans are in it or not. And I can assure you that they're not going to be there, especially if their quarterback situation looks anything like it looked like tonight. In any event, man, that's going to do it for this breakdown, and I appreciate you guys hanging with me. I've got another game I'm going to break down here afterwards, Seahawks and the Cardinals, which was a wild affair up in Seattle as the Seahawks lose that football game and drop out of the second seed and now relinquish their first round bye, and they got to win and get some help to get back in to a position of power in the NFC conference. We'll talk about that game a little bit later on, but if it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here on the lockdown coverage, or in this case, Saturday Night Football overtime. Texans find a way to win late missed field goal by the Cincinnati Bengals gives the Texans a 12-10 win and the AFC South Division at 9-6. Mazer _12 says the ironic part about O'Brien's play calling is that they talk about high percentage throws and they rarely run those types of plays, which is my biggest gripe with this football team and their play calling. You want high percentage throws, especially at the beginning of the game, to get your guy into a rhythm, which I rarely see with this offense. Early in the season, there were high percentage throws, and it's not a coincidence that that's when the Texans were at their best offensively. Early in the season against Chicago and Kansas City, when they were throwing the football quick to Will Fuller, that set up deep shots down the field to Will Fuller and Nuke and all these guys. And the offense looked so much better and in a rhythm earlier in the season. And they're not even doing those things anymore. I just don't understand the logic there. But again, it's not me calling the plays. It's them. They must know best. They're watching the film. They're watching the tape. Maybe it's a thing here, play there, adjustment here, adjustment there. And they're right there. They're close on the brink of breaking through offensively. Maybe not. I'm just calling it the way I see it. And it's frustrating to watch because this defense is so good. If they had any help on the offensive side of the football, this would be a dangerous team in the AFC Conference. That being said, you guys have a wonderful Christmas. You'll see me again, 2 more games tomorrow, and I'll be trying to get through some games on lockdown coverage tomorrow as I see fit. So in any event, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Enjoy the day, enjoy the family, enjoy the food. There'll be some basketball on. Enjoy all of it. And in the midst of that, come check your man Louie Tee out as I break down these games from Saturday and the ones that will take place on Sunday as well. Have a good one. See you a little bit later on. Adios. God bless and good night.
Broncos win the Super Bowl when Peyton Manning retired.